So we're going to continue with where we left off with the different compensation plans. Specifically, we'll look at the one-time payment plans and the different types there are, and allowance type plans. We're not going to create all of them. It's pretty much the same steps, same fields, but they might have a different purpose. And then we'll then look at grades and like we did, and then the job profiles. And those are pretty much lecture screens because we already saw within Workday what the grade screen looks like, what are the fields on the grades and the grade profiles, and what the job profiles look like. And if we get through those, then we'll get into some of the foundational compensation setups, which are typically beyond the scope of like advanced comp course, but they will come in handy if you're doing like a blank slate implementation, or you're part of like a payroll integration, and then you need to set up some of the elements. So I'll go over some of those tasks, the agenda, and then we're going to skip down to the eligibility rules and where we left off. Okay, so within the compensation plans, and we already saw the merit stock, but of course the foundational plan is the salary plan, which is the annual salary, and then there's the hourly plan as well. So for people who get paid by the hour, and on that screen, you will have something called apply FTE, which is the full-time equivalence. So that means if someone has an annual salary of whatever amount, but if they're only working 20 hours out of the 40 hours that for that location, then we want Workday to prorate their annual salary based on their full-time equivalent. So if we have that checkbox checked, then the system will take into account how many hours they work. So 1 FTE means they work full-time. Half FTE means they work half-time. And 0.75 or 0.8, like whatever the ratio is, the system will take that into consideration. And if we want to exclude this particular plan from merit, then it will select that. And then the plans will, unless you're the implementer, the plans will already be set up. So the task that you will use to make any changes would be edit salary plan. Probably 99.9% of the time, you're not going to make any changes to the salary plan that's already set up. But in case you ever had to, it's just edit salary plan. And then hourly plan as well. Okay. So just a screenshot of the salary plan. Okay. And a screenshot of the hourly plan screen. And then there's all of the plans have a plan eligibility field, like we saw with merit, like which population is. So here for hourly, your eligibility rule might be based on a certain job codes or job family or some job level that indicates that everybody who's in that is eligible for the hourly plan because they'll get paid by the hour rather than on a fixed monthly or annual salary. And then we have one-time payment and allowance plans. So for these, they could be amount-based, where there's an exact amount and a currency, and there could be a default amount, and that can be overridden when you actually do it when you actually assign it to the employee. So to create the plan, the task name is just like we saw with bonus or merit, but for allowance plan, it will be create allowance plan. And then for one-time plans, it's create one-time. That's the task name. Okay. So example of a one-time payment plan would be a sign-on bonus plan. So when someone gets hired, they might get a sign-on bonus. So this one-time payment plans allow the ability to award an ad hoc payment to an individual employee. So it's used for employee referrals, retention bonuses, or even severance payments. So everything from when the person is getting hired as part of their offer letter, they might be getting some type of a bonus, or they're terminated and they might get some type of a severance payment. So you need to set those up as one-time payment plans.
As regard these plans, there must be one salary plan at least, right? I mean, there should be something as regards plan. Or, I mean, that is applicable for salary plan, but is it applicable for any of the allowance or any other plan?
No, the salary
I mean,
plan
if we
itself
configure the
can be a
system, let's assume
separate
we
plan.
configure the system. Yeah, if you configure the system, there must be some salary plan or a workday plan, right?
Yes.
At least one.
Yeah. Yeah. So this, yeah, the salary plan will be there.
But that is not true for maybe allowances also. It may be there or may not be there, right? Depends.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Depending on the country and the company, they may or may not be there. International companies will have them. One-time payment plans, yeah, most companies will have them because they do need a way to do ad hoc payments, whether it's a spot bonus or a severance payment. And
whatever type of payment is, I mean, whether it is referral or retention, you can have just one-time plan and other can be configured. The other dimensions can be configured. That is what you're saying? Or for each of these dimensions, there needs to be one-time payment plan?
Yeah, there will be a separate plan for each of these ad hoc payments.
Okay.
Yeah. But they're all set up pretty much the same way. And let me bring over the screen that shows the different one-time payment plans, just to get an example of the different types. Okay, so once again, the menu name is Comp Plans. And then if you go to the one-time plans, there is, the above and beyond recognition award, some type of bonus one-time payment, some other type of bonus, some kind of architect bonus, commission one-time payment, corporate housing, like all of these different types of spiff payment, sales awards, spot bonus, termination payment. These are all the different types of one-time payment plans. And they're all set up with the task name is create one-time payment plan. And I just want to show you the screen for that. Okay, so basically the name. You want to track balance, period, schedule. Oh, sorry, that's the time off plan. Create one-time
So
payment.
generally, I mean, commonly there will be one merit plan, maybe one bonus plan, one stock plan, and multiple one-time payment plans. That is what we can see in an organization, right?
Yes, and I'll show them on the screen as well.
Okay.
So generally, one-time payment plans are going to be amount-based, and you give it a name. And recently, Workday has added the feature called Worker Selectable. So previously, any of these ad hoc payments had to be entered by either the manager or HR. I think like 1 or 2 releases ago, if you check this inbox, then the worker can initiate this plan. So it's usually for some companies use it for overtime payment. If they don't have an overtime tracking module and someone works a weekend shift, so like for your weekend shift, they allow the employee to submit it. And because this is a business process, they could route it to the manager for approval. Then they could route it to HR admin and then to payroll or payroll notification. And then plan name, any kind of eligibility rule. And typically, There may not be a profile for it because these are just ad hoc payments, but there can be. For example, if there was a standard payment for a weekend shift, then you may default a particular amount. The compensation element that goes along with that will map to the payroll system, any default target amount, default currency, but that's pretty much it. How you create any type of one-time payment plans is very simple, and then you just create that. Digging a little bit deeper into these plans. So we got the compensation element, which come from the payroll team, and then there is a code behind these. If you click in here and then go to the integration IDs, and then you'll see the code behind it, which will be used in, for example, in the integrations. All right, so fairly straightforward. We saw the merit plans, we saw the bonus plans. Some examples of allowance plans: car allowance, education allowance. They all have, the compensation element, the default currency, if there's an eligibility rule, and then, part of the package.
There was a field called enable coverage date, Ramesh. Enable coverage date. What is that?
Where did you see it?
The same one. The one-time payment, second or third field was enable coverage date. I mean, is that have any significance? I don't know. If you go back to one-time payment, any of those which you have opened.
Okay, so
the second, third field from the above, from the top.
Enable coverage dates.
I mean, I thought we'll put effective date, amount, and that's all. And maybe for reporting purpose, what is that for?
Yeah, I think it's only for reporting purposes. I have not seen that used. Enable coverage date. Yeah, this is an optional field. If I remember correctly, it was introduced about 2 releases back. What it allows you to do, if you have a retention type one-time payment, so it wouldn't apply to like an engineering incentive plan type, but if you had something like retention bonus and it was you pay out in 2 years, for example, so you would enable this, and there will be a checkbox, and that means when you're giving this payment to the employee, on that screen, you could say, this payment is now tracked for, you're making the payment now, but you could put a future date, like I say a year from now. And then if the employee terminates before that 1 year, you could set it up as an alert in your termination process that this employee owes money back, sort of like a clawback feature. But prior to this, you had to track it on a report. Like when someone was terminating, you basically ran a report like, did they receive any type of one-time payment that was eligible for clawback? But here, you could put it into the system and then add it to your termination process. So Workday will automatically track that, hey, this plan has some type of a coverage date. And then if you meet that condition, then you could set up some type of action to some, group like payroll or HR admin that, please notify payroll that this employee needs to pay back a particular bonus. So that's what that coverage date is.
Okay. And Ramesh, if any of the one-time payment requires employee to upload some justifying or substantiate some documents for that, I mean, how that is linked? I mean, this can be configured by HR, right? Suppose HR giving me joining bonus or maybe retention bonus, but they also want in other scenarios, they want employee to upload some documentation. Is that something that can be linked to maybe employee profile or documentation records?
Yeah, there is usually most of the business processes, they do have the ability to upload an attachment with it. And then in the business process, you could also make the attachment required or not required. And then if you do the attachment, then it does stay part of the transaction record under the full process record.
Okay, so some of the one-time payment which require documents to be uploaded can be made separate business process with required attachment as the process step, right?
Yes, yeah. Just like we have attachments in job change or salary change.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So, okay. So even though there's like so many different plans, but I love the way how like Workday has really made it simplified. You know, it's very simple to set up the merit plans, simple to set up the bonus plan, very simple to set up the one-time payment plans, stock plan. On some of these, you could change the labels on it. Like here is called equity plan. Most companies will just call it stock plan. So the label is maintained from custom labels, task. Let's see what I could tell you about that. And then I do want to show you the business process behind it.
So ideally, I mean, what is the problem in maybe allowing almost every field label to be changed? Otherwise, the underlying record or field is going to be the same, right? And is there any restriction on some of the fields label not to be changed?
Not all fields labels can be changed. So when you go to that task, you'll notice that it's only about like 200 fields where the label can be changed, and not every single thing on the screen. So just so that you could customize it, like, you know, based on whatever the culture of the company is. So, so it does allow that customization, and that's the purpose of the changing labels.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm showing you the BP for request one-time payment, the default one. The default one does not have any, you know, multiple steps, but obviously, if you require approvals from the manager or CFO or HR, you could add them just like as any other BP. Yeah. You can put conditional rules on it, like if the amount is more than a particular amount, then it goes to CFO for approval. And we saw different types of one-time plans. Eligibility rules we already touched upon earlier. The task name is, you know, compensation eligibility, create compensation eligibility rule. And that allows the plan, even these one-time payment plans, to automatically assign it to the employee's profile during a staffing change event. And a staffing change event is change job, hire, create position, and then hire. So the plans will get automatically assigned to the employee based on the compensation eligibility rules.
I mean, when Workday is doing their releases, you know, semi-annual release, and currently, like my organization has already launched a merit process, but there is a significant changes in that release, which they are going to apply in the middle of my, you know, merit or, you know, performance process. So what will happen in this case? Like, is it going to impact my existing merit process if there are significant changes in that?
Wait, if you have the merit process open and then they apply changes?
Yeah.
If you have the merit process open and you're part of that, then you cannot do job change or salary change on your profile while it's open.
No. What I'm saying, like they have semi-annual releases, right, for the product itself. So in that release, let's say if they are doing some significant changes in the merit process and all, okay, maybe some grid level changes or any other changes they have released, okay, for this version of this product which is going to get released or which is going to get applied, tenant during this time frame, these are the changes in the compensation components. So what will happen if my already, any merit process is in progress?
Right. Okay. So when they actually push the change out, for these type of critical things that are dependent on client configuration, there is a on-off button. So you have a little bit of a control when you want to configure it. Like they will release it into production. Like, okay, it was released as part of the September 22nd release. And then you have to enable it. So then once you're ready, then you enable it. Like we saw in the plan, there was this button called configuration of dates, that the question you asked for. So the plan is already there. Then they released this feature of adding that date, but that date has not been used for previous transactions. So now this field is there. It can be enabled, but it will only be enabled going forward for new transactions that get initiated after that change. And that date button that we saw, it's not gonna appear on transactions that have already occurred before we enable that. So there is that type of control.
Okay.
And then for other things which the client or the different Workday customers that do not have any control, those are the things that typically I see like changes to the homepage. So when Workday pushed out the new homepage last year in 2023, I think first release it was optional, and then in the second release of the year it was mandatory that by default every Workday customer's homepage was going to get changed. But it wasn't like a critical compensation process where things would be in the middle. But on that, an example of that would be that people had homepage where they had announcements. They had an announcements widget in, like say, for example, on the left-hand side. But now Workday moved it to the bottom right-hand side. So, when the release was moved into production, you woke up and, things were not where you left them because Workday changed everything to whatever that new release was. But the best practice is these releases are before they get put into production, like about 90 days before that, they get moved into the preview environment, and you see them there, you test them there, and then you're ready for that change to appear in Workday. And then if it requires you to make any changes in order to go live, then you have already done those setups beforehand.
Okay.
Yeah. One thing, since you brought up the grid, a lot of things, when you make changes to it, then you have to relaunch the process to take into effect. But the changes to the grid, you could do it in real time. Like you launch the grid program, but then you decide, hey, we need to add one more field to it. You could actually edit the grid, and then in real time, it will be updated for all the planners as well. And you could also take away fields while it's in progress. So that really helps if you need to add a calculation or add any fields.
Okay.
Just side note. Okay. All right. So those are all the different type of compensation plans there are. And then we covered the grades and the grade profiles. Let me go through some of the job and position screens we went through, but just talk about it in general from the slide deck. So we'll talk about creating positions, creating jobs, and the concept of like hiring restrictions, which are on positions. Hiring restrictions are on positions. Okay.
Hey, ZaranTech now offers SAP corporate training. That's right. Train your workforce in SAP with our comprehensive program. We offer customized courses, certified trainers, and hands-on labs for both individuals and businesses. Our standout features: bespoke training, fully configured servers for practice, in-house materials, and a dedicated LMS. Plus, get session recordings and 24/7 support. From functional to technical modules, we have got it all. Choose ZaranTech for SAP training and watch your team excel. Learn, upskill, succeed with ZaranTech.
Positions and jobs, they both use job profiles as their foundation, just like we said. So when we're creating a position, think of it as a headcount chair. We're creating a chair so the employee can come sit in the chair. So position is going to be part of the headcount, and then the job is going to be the job code is going to be associated with that particular position. Okay, and that job code is going to have a job profile. The job profiles describe the general characteristics of a job or a position. So when I say general characteristics, like we saw on the job screen, there was a lot of fields, right? All of those fields, such as pay type, salary type, grade, business title, or the job title, the EO reporting job classification, all of those together make up what's called the job profile. Okay. A job profile can be assigned to multiple positions or workers. So a job profile, like one job profile, can be assigned to multiple positions or to multiple workers. But it could also have a one-on-one, one-to-one relationship with positions. Like some position, like the CEO, there's only going to be one job code and then one position associated with it. But then it could also have same job profile against many positions, such as the executive assistant. And the task name to create we saw edit job profile, but create one brand new is create job profile. If you're going to create like 100 of them, then there is a load file for that. Okay, a little bit about the job category hierarchy. From within Workday point of view, we don't really need to get into the theory behind like the job category hierarchy, but it does help us to know this type of terminology, because the HR folks will be talking in this kind of language. And in Workday, we do have fields for this type of job category hierarchy. So at the very bottom level, we have positions, right? These are the chairs that the employee actually sits in, right? There's a chair for the HR specialist, a chair, for HR generalist. There's a chair for benefits analyst. And there's a very specific reason I'm calling these chairs, okay? Because without a chair, you cannot have an employee in that role. And then when you transfer an employee to a different manager, you have to decide, are you going to send the chair? Are you going to send the position that the employee is sitting in? Are you going to send that to the new manager? Or the new manager already has a different chair where the worker could go sit in? So that is a decision point whenever you're doing a transfer. And when you set up the staffing model or when you're doing hiring, you better be able to explain why you cannot take your position, you cannot take the chair that you're sitting in, you cannot take your HR specialist chair, you cannot take it with you when you leave HR department and you start working in finance. That chair needs to stay behind, and you better have another approved position in the other department. So just a little bit of lecture on, think of positions as chairs. Okay, so these chairs are associated with job profiles. So you're going to have like a job profile called HR specialist, and then it could be linked to one or more positions. Go ahead. There was a question. Okay. So there's the job profiles. Multiple positions can be grouped under one job profile. And then multiple job profiles are linked to one job family. Okay, so here, for example, we have HR services. Under that are the different services, job profiles, and then you create positions based on those job profiles. On the screen that had the job profile, there was also a field for job family. Okay. And then on the field for job family, on the page for job family, there's a field for job family group. And to create these is create job family group, create job family, create job profile, create position. Those are the task names for everything that you see on this screen.
Because many of us are from PeopleSoft background, and I have seen your profile. You are also from PeopleSoft background, right?
Yes, well, that
so
was a
we
long
used to
time
have
ago.
Right. But at least on the job and position, I think we all remember that concept.
Yeah. Yes.
In PeopleSoft, there was an option to have either job or position or both, right? But here
Yes.
you are saying there is no option. You must have position.
Correct. The position would be there, but it would be created automatically, or you create it there. So there's a staffing model for hiring. One is called job management, which does not require positions, and then one is called position management, which does require positions. But even in the job management field, in the job management staffing model, even though it doesn't require positions, but in the back end, the system is creating a position for the worker to sit in. But it just, at the time of hiring, you just hire people directly into the job profile without having to create one or many positions.
So Dheeraj, it's similar to what PeopleSoft had, like position-based management or job code-based management. They just changed it job code here to job profile. They put it under job profile. So basically, you will hire someone in position like finance, IT people, where you know what are their specific characteristics, and you will use job code profile for more generic characteristic of a job. Let's say for a people working on a plants, okay, paint department. Now people who are actually doing paint on a car in a manufacturing line, they will have same job codes. They will have same job characteristics. So you can hire a lot of people in a job code based model, but you can hire only specific people in position. Like if you have open a position, only it will be like 1-to-1 basically. You can't hire more people in position. It should be specific to you only. But in a job code based model, you can hire multiple people. Like you can open
That's right. That is something that we have seen and we have done in the PeopleSoft. That's what I wanted the clarity on. Because here, if we are hiring at least even one person or 10 people in same job code, or maybe one person in one job code, there must be some chairs first for that particular person to sit in, right?
Correct. So I know the staffing model is not part of our lectures for this, but I'll just briefly go into it. Like, what is the difference between the job-based staffing model and the position management? So if you're a fast-growing company, right, like you're a startup, you need to hire fast, you need to terminate fast, and you don't require approvals for every single position, right? So in that scenario, you will do what's called a job management staffing model. So you could quickly hire without having to worry about creating positions. But if you are a established company and you need approvals for each position you create, then you're going to use the create position model or a position.
So I understood the controls. From controls perspective, I'm absolutely okay. And I have the clarity that there can be a maximum, or I would say highest level of restriction or maybe control can be put on the position model. That is right.
Yeah.
But now let's assume you are following job staffing model, right? Not the position one. But then also, if you hire someone, you must have a position created for that, right? That person.
No, you just hire directly. You go to the job profile and you hire there, and then you'll notice that yes, the person is sitting in a position now, but it's not like something that you had to create, and like you didn't need to manage that. You're just hiring directly into the job. You're hiring at this level.
Right.
Got it. No need to explicitly create the positions and then hire into that position. That is what you're saying.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
It will be internally managed at the back end by the Workday.
Yes.
The only thing is between these two is like you can specifically put restriction for a specific position, but you can put restrictions in job management model only on the supervisory level. Basically, no matter how many jobs you create under that supervisory organization, the restrictions will be applied on a supervisory level on all jobs. So that is basic one difference.
Yep.
Right. That I understood. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So all of those, job family group, all of that now, then it gets part of what's called the job catalog. So in Workday, you will also have what's called the job catalog. And if the company is really robust, they will have, the job family groups, they will have the job families and job profiles. And then they will have the job descriptions. And you might be asked to upload all of the job descriptions against the job profiles. So that is usually a big task. And you could charge a lot of money for it because it is very time consuming to do. So they might be doing what's called job code architecture or job streamlining. But it's basically shifting, these things around, creating new job profiles, combining them, creating new job families, creating new job family groups, and then assigning it to the employee, removing the old job profiles from the employees and assigning them to the new ones. So basically that kind of like a shift and shuffle. Usually it comes to be like at least a $10,000 to $20,000 project just to do that kind of shuffling. Pretty easy to do. Requires a lot of loading, but not technically, difficult. All right. What is a job catalog? Job catalog is a cornerstone of hierarchy of jobs within the organization. The job catalog may include levels, titles, job descriptions as well. All of the job profiles, they would be there. It is a foundation of all other areas of your Workday deployment, including talent, recruiting, compensation, career mobility, and succession planning. Okay. Okay, job profile screens we saw. This screen was before, Workday just had a new screen last month. So this is the old version of the screen, but all the fields are still the same. Just they have been moved around. Okay. Effective date, job profile name, job code, include job code in the name, and then the job description, job level, job family, job category. We saw the grades, such as grade E, and then the zone 1 salary range, zone 2 salary range. All of these are maintained using, mostly by EIBs as part of the job restructuring projects. I put in a slide here about grade bands and levels, just so that you're familiar with the words, because the compensation team might use them. But from a Workday perspective, we don't really need to know about it or manage it, but just, the buzzword, right? They might say bands or they might say levels. So whether the company is using grades or levels or not, like they might ask you like, hey, should we use grades? Should we use, bands, or should we not? So obviously if you use a grade or a band or a level, you could have the, you could use a min-max, in advanced comp, so during your merit or bonus, there you could base like what is the minimum salary or the maximum salary, and you could use that in the advanced comp modules. You could also give guidance to managers during the propose or request comp process. You could identify there. And then these bands or levels can also be used in step conditions or eligibility rules. Okay. So that's why we should use grades, or some people call grade bands or levels, but typically it's called a grade, but they pretty much mean the same thing. But if the grades are not global, then you could put the ranges. If the grades are not global, then they must have multiple job profiles. So an example of that would be payroll accountant in each country. Like if you're gonna do, say, like payroll accountant in India, if they're gonna have a separate salary range than the payroll accountant in UK, but if you don't use the grade, then the only way to differentiate the range for the person in India versus the person in UK is to have two different job profiles, or basically the same thing, but segregated by some type of a country code. But if you did use grade, then you use the same job profile, but one with the India grade profile and one with the UK grade profile. So if you want to cut back on the number of job profiles that you have, then you use grades. And that will be part of the discussion when you do, they might say, hey, we have too many grade profiles, or we don't have enough grade profiles, or we need to do some other type of cleanup.
If we get into some assignment, or we propose some assignment to customer as regards health check, right? Is there any way or programs or reports that we can use, or you can recommend us, that can be used as part of those health check assignments to find out some of those stuff which customer may not be knowing or letting us know, right? But we should be able to find out from the system what is clogging the system and what can be cleaned up. Is there any recommendation or experience or comment you can make on that?
Yeah, I mean, you have you could run audits, and you could see, for example, how many transactions in each particular area, right? Like you might do, you might check how many corrections that they're doing. So behind the scenes, you run a query to see which type of transactions they're doing the most corrections in, right? And then you could focus on like, okay, you have a lot of manual rework in this particular area. And then you could recommend changes to it, or try to investigate why do they have so many corrections, or if they have so many job profiles but they're not being used, or they're active but they've never been used, then you could recommend cleanup, because otherwise the system is not very efficient in terms of people finding the right job code.
So, I mean, if something is not getting used, is there any way to find that out? That it is created but it's not getting used?
Yes, just running the audit reports, for example, the job codes that are not part of any worker profile, or business process that, you could run a report on business processes and see, just the count of them, how many times they have been run, which kind of, is HR running them, or the managers are running them, how long is the approval process. You may make recommendations that, you have too many approvers. Well, you let them decide if it's too many approvals or not, but you could let them know that it's taking you, 10 days to approve a transaction, whereas other companies you have seen, they're doing it in 5 days, and they only have such and such approval flows. So every single thing you could have reports on, or you create a custom report to get that type of data.
But are there any delivered audit reports?
Yeah, there are delivered audit reports. They usually have the keyword audit in them. And you could try it that way. There's also standard report catalog. I believe that's the exact name of it. And it'll give you a list of all the reports. And then you put what type of reports, right? So then you select all the audit ones. And then based on that, you create what's called a heat map, right? So you could look up, not look up, but you create a heat map for your client showing which business processes use the most, which ones use the least, which ones having the longest, which one's having the most corrections, or which one needs improvements. Perhaps it's taking too long to process the data. But you'll create what's called a heat map for them based on the data that you see. Okay, so that's the grades example. We covered that. In terms of grade setups, the grades could be set up by geographical region, and then you give them different ranges. Your example of Chicago, New York, obviously you could do it between countries as well. And then the task to create jobs and positions. Positions is always under the supervisory hierarchy, but yeah, go ahead.
What sets ZaranTech apart in SAP corporate training? It's our unique blend of expertise and innovation. We offer customized courses tailored to each client's needs, ensuring relevant, targeted learning. Our vast trainer database brings you wisdom from the best in the field. Need resources? Access our extensive training material repository anytime. We are all about measurable results, providing detailed student metrics to track progress. And we don't just teach, we build community. Join our thriving social media network, connecting learners beyond boundaries. With ZaranTech, you are not just training, you are transforming your SAP expertise.
I just want to state over here that you need an open position available before you could hire in a supervisory org if it's using the position staffing. There's few mandatory fields on the position, such as the position title, number of positions. So when you're creating one position, you could actually, here you could put 10, and you'll get 10 positions created of the exact same thing. So you could hire 10 people by just having to submit it once. You submit it once, you indicate 10 positions, and it will only go through one approval flow. So there's no individual approvals for each of the positions. So this really helps.
One doubt, like in the same supervisory organization, can you have both, like position based and job based one? Like
no, not at the same time. At the same time, you cannot.
Okay.
You could do it at different times. You could switch the model. I would not recommend it because if you have created,
that's all. Like in case if some manager have like the experienced people and they're hiring some 10, 15 freshers or something, they're like based on the job base, they will keep the freshers in the separate supervisor organization like that. Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, in fact, Shrikant's question is absolutely valid, because if you look at the C-level people, their positions are more or less constant, right? I mean, CEO, CFO, CEO, whatever it is. I know those may not get managed under Workday directly, but those positions can have position-based kind of hierarchy or that supervisory organ, right? And the level below can have job-based, right? Where you may not have to control each and every position. A mix of job and position that will help in most of those organizations, right?
Yeah. And as much as possible, you do not want to switch between the different models. I understand, like, very large company, that might have 100,000 employees. They may have two different staffing models at the same time. But typically, you would not. You would only have one staffing model.
Okay. But if we have, let's assume, I think you have answered it, that you can switch between the model. But I just wanted to reconfirm. If we start with job model, the company is small, but they grow to a large or maybe SMB segment or mid-size segment, then we can switch the job model to position based. That's what you're saying, right?
Yes, you can. Yeah. With the hiring restrictions, you control how a position or job management can be filled. With job management, one set of hiring restrictions can be for the entire supervisory org. And you can loosen the hiring restrictions by selecting the Allow Override Restrictions checkbox in the Edit Tenant HCM task. So, just a little bit of useful task there. Okay. Default compensation, yes, when you're creating the position, under that position, the position and then related actions, you can select compensation and then the requested default compensation task. You could include that so that when you hire someone, there will be a default compensation there. This could help guide the hiring manager in terms of what is the recommended salary for that role.
So that is not automatically picked up as a midpoint of the grade range, the default compensation.
Yeah, the default compensation is not going to be the midpoint; it's going to be the actual amount that's entered. But on different place, you could see the minimum, mid, and the midpoint.
Okay, no, but because suppose there are 10 positions I'm creating, right? A 10 number of positions for one position, maybe. Then, we will have to go to each and every position and default it to some different values, or it will pick up it from the grade range. That is my question.
It will pick up on the position, and when you get there, once you the page that says 10 positions, right? So after that comes the page for compensation. So on that one, you will enter the actual salary amount, and then you could also enter the grades. So it's okay. Only once.
I got it. Yeah. Understood.
Okay, so then these are just the task names for to-do activities in the tenant, like create position there, create grade and create grade profiles. I want to cover quickly on the comp structure in terms of, like, unless you're doing implementation from the very beginning, you're not going to be involved in these steps. You're mostly going to be doing eligibility rules, the compensation plans, and then adding the plans. But if you happen to be involved at the very implementation time, let me just cover, briefly, maybe in just 10 minutes, these different steps that are the foundation of the compensation structure within Workday. Okay. So first of all, there's the frequency of compensation, right? So this means, like, is it an annual plan? Is it monthly? So basically, all the different frequencies, they need to be defined. Okay? And I have a screenshot of the different types of frequencies here somewhere. Is it visible? Let me actually pull it up in Workday itself. This is really useful when you're doing integration work. So that's why I want to spend the time to just pull it up on screen and show it to you guys. So the task name is maintain frequencies, and obviously the standard frequency is annual because we have the annual salary, right? But even that has to be set up at the time of implementation. There has to be one, frequency. There could also be monthly and then daily frequency. And then at the top here, this one is called 12.96 factor NL. In Netherlands, that NL stands for Netherlands. The way they have structured their salary is whatever their 12-month salary is, you have to multiply by, instead of factoring it just for 12 months, it's 12.96, like whatever their business logic is. But from experience, I know that is 12.96 for Netherlands. So I created a different factor for that. Some countries in Asia, their salaries are based on a 13 months. So you have to set up the 13-month frequency. And then some of them actually have 14 months. So the reason I set these up was when I was setting up the integration that goes from Workday to ADP, the salary in Workday was only an annual amount, but your payroll system needs it in 14 months amount or 13 month or 12.96. So then this allowed the payroll integration to say, okay, if the person is, if their frequency is 13 months, then convert this annual amount to 13 months. And this is the annualization factor in this column. This tells the system what to multiply with. So if it's, just annual, it's 1, but if it's more than that, you change it accordingly. And then if it's monthly, then the annualization factor is 12. And then this one is used in the payroll interface. So I had to create these at the time of setting up the payroll integrations. So important menu. Okay, so that is the frequencies.
We need like the frequency. If we change it to like the monthly frequency to 13, is there a period schedule or something also we need to update?
Yeah, the period schedule is an independent task,
okay.
And that's already going to be defined. But
okay.
Period schedule is going to show, that's used in showing the salary within Workday. The screen I was showing was that I need these frequencies to send to other systems through the integration. Like within Workday, we only show salary and annual. We don't even use monthly salaries, for this particular client. But their integration or their payroll system requires the salaries in monthly amounts. So I set up the frequencies using that task. Then we have the compensation elements. The task name is once again just create compensation element, and I have a screenshot of that here. Maintain compensation elements, the name of the element, and then what we have, the description, the element name in Workday, and then this is the payroll mapping. So it's going to be the list of different elements from payroll, and then you match, like car allowance here matches to the car allowance from the payroll system. So that type of setup.
So these are all the external earnings, is it, or like it's internal earnings?
The compensation elements are going to be, they're set up within the HR system to help it communicate with the payroll system, whether it's going to be the internal payroll system or an external payroll system. But basically the compensation is it helps connect them.
Are there any cases where a particular plan has more than one compensation element?
No, because then that would be confusing, right? Like, how are you going to, if someone's getting a spot bonus, it could only be coded against one type of payment in that. So you will not have more than one compensation element. If you do need it, then you create 2 different plans with, the 2 different compensation elements.
Okay.
And then the after that, your foundation is your compensation formula, which is the compensation basis, which the standard is the base pay. And then you could have another compensation basis called base pay plus allowance. So those are the two common compensation formulas as well. And then you got the eligibility rules. And once you have those, then you create the guidelines, which are the grades or the grade profiles. And then you take the eligibility rules and the guidelines and the compensation basis and the element, and you take all four of these, and then you add them to the compensation plan, right? Remember on the compensation plan, like merit, we added the rule, we added the guidelines, we added the compensation basis, and we also added the compensation element. And then finally, the step 7 is you add all of these to the worker's profile. So pretty straightforward steps to that. And just some of the key tasks. Maintain compensation element is the task to create the different elements, and then you match it to the payroll earnings codes. The task name for creating the initial compensation package and the security area for that. And then after that, you basically use edit compensation package to make updates to it. As you create new grades or grade profiles or new plans, you add them to the compensation package. So the task name is edit compensation package. All right. I think that's, yeah. And then the task name for creating grades, we already covered that. And then for grades and job profiles. And then some more examples. Okay. Next time, I will talk about the business processes that are used in compensation. And then I'll try to pull up a consulting heat map that I got from another company when they did, when they were hired to do some Workday improvements.
So irrespective of the type of the comp plan, the ones that you showed earlier on the screen, like merit plans, bonus plans, one-time pay, compensation plans or payment plans. So the process to roll out or the task to roll out to the eligible employees is same, right?
Correct. Yeah, all of them have the rollout menu.
Okay. Yeah. So once we select that task, roll out compensation plan to eligible employees. So there, I mean, like we can select compensation plan of any category or any type, right?
Correct.
That's the only task, right? Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. All right. Yeah. And I just wanted to confirm that. Yeah.
And then for something like allowance, you're not going to do a mass rollout of the allowance plan. But when it's something like merit plan or bonus, then you're going to use those menus. But for allowance, it gets assigned at the time of hire, right? Or when there's a job change, then they might be put on an allowance plan in case they were not on that plan before.
Okay. How about shift allowance kind of thing? It can happen anytime, and it can happen frequently as well, right?
Yes. So you would use the request compensation business process. So under actions or there's a business process called request comp, and you use that to assign. You will use that to assign it to the employees.
Okay.
But the allowance plans can be rolled out using the rollout functionality. I'm just saying that in real life, you're not going to do a mass rollout, but you do that for merit or bonus.
Okay. And so shift allowance kind of thing, which is dynamic in nature. I mean, like the days the employee has worked on shifts, then only he should be paid the shift allowance for that day, right? So how to take care of this kind of scenario?
That is a trick question because shift is not something that gets managed in, like, unless you have the time off module, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So shift is not one of these plans. Mm-hmm. But like since if you don't have the shift, if you don't have the time off manage module, you might just create a like here's something called like holiday bonus, and then assign this to the employee using request comp, and then assign them this one-time payment plan. Like just imagine if this was like shift bonus, but the actual shift that you work, that's not being, that would be tracked under the time management.
Time management.
Yeah, which is not here.
Okay. So in short, it has to be taken care of manually.
Correct.